Hi, I'm Lowell Katie, and I want to talk about the NI Texture Classifier. We've got in the image is a fibrous material, non-woven fibrous material, and I'm making the assumption that we want this to be as uniform as possible, and anything that is not uniform in these shapes is going to be a defect. So I'm going to set up the classifier so that maybe this blob right here and this blob right here will be seen as a defect. So I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I've already gone through this once, so I'll go through the settings kind of quick on this. There are a number of wavelet types, and there are so many I can't tell you what all of them do. I just don't know. The instructions tell you to go through each one and find the one that is able to identify the defect. Realistically, there were a handful in all of these wavelet types that do that. I've actually selected the very last wavelet. I've also fine-tuned the inspection sizes to identify those defects. What is happening behind the scenes is it takes the image and it breaks it into its frequencies, and then we can select a particular type of wavelet that will enhance or will show the defect that we're looking for. Most of these almost look like noise, and that's okay for these uniform textures. So it's random, and that's one of the things that's interesting about this non-woven, but the spacing of the randomness is what we're trying to determine as being good or bad. So I'm going to jump to the one, let's see, I think it's image number 10, the one that had the strongest, what I would call non-uniform defect. So step through these. I switched to a different wavelet display so we can see what they look like as we work our way up to number 10. And okay, number 10 was the one that I was really focusing on. There's a fibrous chunk in a couple of places here, and then there's another one a little bit lower down and to the left. So I was tuning the window size, the step size, and the delta in order to make that stand out in at least one of the wavelet styles. So the low is, I believe, the lowest frequency. You can see, like, if it does a low and a high frequency, it kind of neutralizes that change. Let's look at the low. And here in the entropy image, we can definitely see that the area in the normal image that contains our defect where the fibers have clumped together shows up as a very dark spot that is mimicking the shape of our defect. From identifying a defect in at least some of the wavelets is key to moving on, before moving on to the texture classifier. So in the texture classifier, you want to actually have normal images that don't contain the defect. You want to sample those and teach those train them as the normal texture. I could put more in here, but honestly these three worked really well, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. So let's look at the image result with the defects overlaid, and they're highlighted in red. There's still a few little spots in there that honestly, I'm not sure what those are doing, but the key is that the largest areas in these images are in fact the defects. I'll walk back towards the beginning of the set. You see there's the place where a bunch of fibers crossed and created a somewhat larger area without any change. And again, we're looking at the red spots in the images, and for most of these, there's no defects. And here's one that has, well, maybe 2 pixels that it thought were a defect in the center, kind of off to the right. Again, most of this would just basically be ignored. I think, here we go. Here's another one where a large clump was identified as being a defect. So that's pretty good. Let's see, we'll walk our way back. Again, not 100% sure why these darker areas, other than there's no change, there's a consistent darkness, so obviously we've identified the places where we had no change in texture because there was a fiber that had clumped together. And my guess is that this is a place where it says, oh, there's no change in texture because there's not enough fibers in that area. Anyway, let's walk back to the very first one. And that's an example of using the NI Texture Training tool. From there, we save the texture, and then that can be added to an inspection step in one of our programs.